fans, welcome back to 1237, back with another review for the month of October, where I'll go through as many Stephen King adaptations as I can. So far, I've done fairly good ones. I think the only rant I've done so far was a mild rant on the original Children of the Corn, which I still get some entertainment out of. So let's do a bad one, which I know there's a lot, but this is one I probably should have known was not going to be very good, because I do remember when this came out. It did not do anything when it came out. Hardly anyone talks about it now. And it's directed by Mick Garris, which Mick Garris, he has a lot of ambition. He was the creator of Showtime's Masters of Horror. People might know him as the writer of Hocus Pocus. But he's also known for doing a number of Stephen King adaptations, which he also directed Psycho 4, which I do enjoy. He also wrote The Fly 2, but he's done a number of Stephen King films, like films. He directed Sleepwalkers and this. Sleepwalkers I still haven't seen. But he also did a number of the television miniseries, which are really not that good. I mean, he did The Stand, which I do enjoy. He did episode of Tales from the Crypt. Quicksilver Highway, which is an anthology of King and Clive Barker. He directed the TV version of The Shining, which I'm not a fan of. Which I don't even have that pulled here, which I'm going to have to get to that. Let's see, he also did Desperation, which I did not see. Bag of Bones, which I did, but I wasn't a fan of. I thought he did more than that, actually, but yeah, so he's done a number of King adaptations. But then in 2004, he did this, based on the short story, and it's Riding the Bullet, which the short story was originally collected in Everything's Eventual, making that the second film adaptation from a story from Everything's Eventual, with the first being 1408, which is a far superior film. But written and directed by Mick Garris, and stars Jonathan Jackson, who kind of looks like a cross between Jared Padalecki and a very young Leo DiCaprio. David Arquette and Barbara Hershey. And an appearance by Cliff Robertson, who, if I'm not mistaken, I think he... Yes, he was Uncle Ben in Spider-Man. So, and really, David Arquette and Barbara Hershey are the only things to take away from this film. And David, for two different reasons. I mean, Barbara Hershey does fine. But David Arquette, you can tell he's having fun, but he is so over the top in this. And I'm pretty sure this was shot with a TV crew, because it just looks and feels so much like a TV movie. And of course, Mick Garris is mostly known for either TV series or TV films. This looks so much like an early 2000s TV movie. I mean, it only grossed $264,000. I'm not sure what the budget was. Robert New did the cinematography, and Nicholas Pike did the score. Neither of which are very much to talk about. But I guess Garrick referred to this film as a nostalgic drama and a ghost story. I guess because it deals a lot with the past. The movie takes place in 1969 as opposed to the book. That's why. The very last line of the film, which I was going to look in the book to see if it was in there. The final line, which is voiceover, says, "We all shine on." I was like, oh, that's cute, Mick. Give a reference to your version of The Shining, which is a quote in the book The Shining. He wanted to use John Lennon's Instant Karma, which has that line, which is where the line comes from in The Shining, but it would have cost $50,000 from Yoko, so he didn't use it. But he said it in 1969, and when you read the back of this, which says, Alan embarks on a 100-mile hitchhike to see his mother in the hospital. Along the way, he must confront his many demons, both living and dead, and make the ultimate choice that will mean life or death for him and his mother. That really doesn't come in until the third act. Really, most of the film is just this college student drifting, getting rides, running away from rednecks on the road, until he's finally picked up by David Arquette, who doesn't say if he's the devil himself, even though the main menu does. Which brings me to a point that this movie is so totally confused. I mean, you look at it and you just think, okay, this is just a cheap horror film. Like a cheap direct-to-video horror film. I put it in, and the main menu gave it like this classic B-movie, almost like a Frank Darabont, like almost what he wanted to do with The Mist, where it looks all gritty and grainy. It has like the horror comic font, like, he hitched a ride with the devil himself, Stephen King's. It's all crooked and everything. And at one point, it even goes into like this Tarantino stylization, where we see what happened to David Arquette's character. And it's like a flashback, like we're going into a movie theater where it says George Straub in Riding the Bullet, because that's his character's name. Then it shows this gritty 70s where it says like George Straub riding the bullet, and it shows how he died. And then it gets all grindhousey where it shows him after the car accident. It's like the end? Question mark. And yeah, I can definitely see there's a lot of attempted humor in this, as dark as it might be. But I really feel like this movie doesn't know what it wants to be, or it doesn't know how to separate horror and comedy, or how to unite them in an effective way. Now, there is a part where I thought, okay, there is an interesting story here. Because we get the idea that this kid, Alan, played by the lead, was it Jonathan Jackson, he's just this edgy, brooding, life is pointless art student who, no matter what they're doing, he always does morbid death portraits. His girlfriend, played by Erica Christensen, who, when her name came up on the title of the credits, I thought, well, even if the movie's bad, at least I like her. From the early to mid 2000s, okay. But then she came on screen, and I realized I was thinking of Erica Learson from the Chainsaw Massacre reboot. I was like, oh, okay, that's not who I was thinking of. She alludes to that she's breaking up with him, so he attempts suicide. And, then you find out, oh, no, I was just doing that, the breakup, so that you could be alone, so that we could set up your surprise birthday, some bullshit. Well, later on, when this ghostly figure of David Arquette tells him, you have to make a choice before we get, to this first light up here, whether you die or whether your mother dies, because she had a stroke, she's in the hospital. That's why he's going from the University of Maine to Lewiston. And there's some lines David Arquette says, like where he grabs the kid's wrist. He's like, oh, like, what? You love death, don't you? You obsess with it. You draw it. You romanticize it. What is it? Life is pointless. Too many people in the world. Like, isn't that all shit you said? So what's the big deal with the choice? Just choose yourself. They could have delved into that more. This just really show if this is some edgy punk kid, or if he really hates his life, and then sort of explore the meaning of life, I guess. But really, and also characters will shift, because when the movie opens and when Erica Christensen's giving him shit for attempting suicide, he does his whole like has these lines about how there's so many people in the world, one death is of insignificant, in the greater scheme of things. Am I really that important? But then, like as the movie goes on, it's like he drops all that, and then he's more concerned about like his own safety and everything. Also, he has like this vision of himself that accompanies him throughout the film that's supposed to be giving him advice, but the advice and the motivations shift between the two so much. Like at different points in the film, the the alternate version, his conscience, I guess, will be like, stop denying rides. Just take the first ride. But then every time he does, he's telling him like, there's something wrong with this guy. Get out, get out. There's something wrong with this guy. And just like personalities and character development is gone. Just it bounces all over the place along with the tone of the film. And it throws some jokes in there like, get it? Because it's 1969. Where his birthday present was tickets to John Lennon and the Plastic Ono Band. He gives the tickets to his two friends. And one of his friends is like, dude, I just had a thought. What happens if all our rock stars get old? That's not a world I want to live in where they're all old and fat. I mean, oh, what's going to happen when, Lennon, Hendrix, Janis, Jim Morrison, one day they're all going to be old. Get it? Because they're all going to be dead in a couple of years. It hasn't happened yet. One joke I did laugh at, which also the recurring theme of the film is this amusement park ride called The Bullet, which when he was a kid, him and his mother, Barbara Hershey, waited in line for hours. Then they finally got to the end. He had a vision of him getting flown out of it. He chickened out. She got mad at him. So this whole thing of like, I did ride the bullet. Which I will say, the movie did keep me guessing as to what that was going to be. Because throughout the film, he keeps having these visions. Even like when the phone rings after she officially breaks up with him, it shows him going to answer it, and it's her sobbing, begging to take him back. But then it shows him going to answer it again. Like, just all these visions or thoughts of what could happen. Sometimes even 2 or 3 times before the actual event occurs. And sometimes I was like, is this for a laugh? Is it for a jump scare? Is it for padding? Most of the time it feels like the latter. It feels like padding. But this whole thing about riding the bullet, David Arquette, and then I thought, like, wait, is this like gonna be like a Final Destination thing where, because he passes a billboard that says Thrill Adventureland is closed. So I was thinking, like, was there like an accident that day that killed a bunch of people? And he did get on it, but he doesn't remember. Like, it did keep me guessing as to where the film was going. But it didn't really go anywhere interesting. Then eventually he does ride the bullet. There's a chase between him and David Arquette. End up at, Thrill Village. He gets on the bullet, and all the dead people of his life are there, like his dad, his mom, who he believes is dead now. And then out of nowhere, his 2 friends from the beginning of the film that he gave his tickets to so they could go to the show, they just like lean into it and they're like, hey man, we didn't quite make it to Toronto. And then they start laughing. I was like, okay, that's kind of funny. I did think that was good. But yeah, most of the movie he's just hitchhiking. At one point, this truck with a couple rednecks throw a bottle at him. He flips them off. They chase him. He hides in a fridge. There's a tarantula in it. There's no tarantulas in Maine. And I did kind of see one thing that was coming, which he stops off in a cemetery for whatever reason. sees the stone for a guy named George Staub, has his picture on it to let us know it's David Arquette. He turns to run because he thinks the stone said something that a vision of his mother said. So he goes to run, trips, hits his head on the stone. I was thinking, okay, the rest of this movie is going to be a dream or something. And it was. Because he leaves the cemetery, he's picked up by David Arquette. And David Arquette he's always entertaining, regardless of what movie he's in or what role he's doing, regardless of if he's actually good at it or if he's just going just balls to the wall over the top, and that's what he's doing in this. I mean, he's doing his David Arquette, like, he tells him his name is Hector, so David Arquette's just like, well, Hector, like, doing like his crazy things with his eyes and his head, and of course his conscience is in the back seat, just freaking out like he does the whole movie. And every so often we see that he gets more and more dead looking. Like first it's just black and gray makeup, and then eventually it's full on zombie makeup. I did like he kind of goes to scratch himself, and we see that there's autopsy stitches as like a hint. He does go to smoke, and it comes out his chest. I was like, okay, that's kind of cool. Excuse me. But yeah, then he talks about how he died, which is we get like that little trailer, this sort of grindhouse trailer flashback, which again, this movie just becomes stylish for no reason. It feels like it's out of nowhere. Even when the kid is sitting in the front seat and it's like everything hits him, like the driver knows who he is, his backstory, knows he's dead. And there's like this superimposed image of the kid like sitting there like this but spinning with like a green lighting, then another one coming in from here. It's like red, but they're both show this world is spinning. It gets stylish out of nowhere. But David Arquette's having fun. He's going over the top with it, and why not? So he is one of the few. He's definitely the most entertaining part of the film. Of course, he comes in very late. I mean, it's really the third act when the riding the bullet story actually comes in. It leads to a foot chase, which they end up at, the amusement park where he rides the bullet. There's even the line where he sneaks up on him. He's like, "They're coming to get you, Barbara." I was like, Mick, you're reminding us of other movies that we should be watching. But, and, he ends up back in the car. He finally decides, take my mother, not me. Gets pushed out of the car. Hitches another ride, makes it to the hospital. Realizes she is still alive. And and there's a nurse named Annie Wilkes. Okay. Cute, but... And I don't know what the point of the movie is. Because, I mean, Barbara Hershey does die, but a couple years later. Like, 3 years later. So, was it just a dream? Was it like a Christmas Carol type thing to just make him appreciate his life and his mother more? I mean, there's a lot of backstory I didn't talk about, like how his mother lied to him his whole life about the death of his father, and whatnot. But, so, like, was it just a dream? Or, like, his own demons? Like, maybe he's running away from his mother, now he appreciates her. It wasn't really delved into that well. But then it kind of has the typical kind of depressing Stephen King ending. Because at the funeral, his ex-girlfriend shows up, they hug. And he was like, well, something good did come out of it. Her and I got married a year later. Didn't last long. A lot of things don't last long. Oh, also Mick Garris has his cameo appearance as a doctor in one of the "What if this happens" sort of visions. But so yeah, it talks about how his mother went on to die in '72. He married his ex, but it didn't last long. They got divorced, and then he just goes on like the Beatles did not get back together in Toronto. In fact, they never get back together again. John Lennon was shot down by a maniac with a gun. I never, and I never made it, made a living. Excuse me, and I never made a living out of painting. So it's all these just kind of like all these things never happened. But what he does do is every time the amusement park is open, he goes and he rides the bullet, and the bullet represents a constant, I guess. At least that's what he makes it sound like. Some things in life, come and go, but the bullet's there forever. Maybe that's supposed to represent all the happiness in his life. And it shows him painting anyway because he likes to. But, so it's like, okay, this edgy, death is good because life is pointless college kid to a guy that appreciates the smaller things in life. If that is the case, the journey of how we got there is not that good. And then it ends with him just walking down the road, and then he's stopped by David Arquette, who offers him a ride. And he's like, "No thanks, I'll walk." Then he drives off. Okay. And yeah, then the final words of the film and the narration is "We all shine on," which I was curious. 405 through 447. So yeah, this movie, there's really not much to it. It really does feel like a TV movie. Yeah, no, it ends with "Take your butt and get out of here," which he does say when David Arquette drives off. So that whole "we all shine on" was added. Now, yeah, it looks and feels like a TV movie. It's stylish for no reason. It comes out of nowhere. Which, I mean, it looks cool. It's aesthetically interesting or funny or entertaining or interesting. But it feels so out of place. The tone is all over the place. It doesn't know if it wants to be a comedy, a dark comedy, a serious horror with maybe a little bit of chuckles put in. The writing is not strong at all. The characters bounce and forth between personalities and motives and thoughts. Especially him and his conscience. They both bounce back and forth between who's supposed to think what. In fact, David Arquette can even see him. He's like, "And who the fuck are you?" He's like, "You the devil on his right shoulder or the angel on his left?" And I'm like, exactly. He keeps telling him. He's telling him opposite things throughout the film. But this really does feel kind of like that early to mid 2000s, not just horror film, but like Stephen King adaptation. A lot of them around this time were really bad. It's easy to see why this movie did not take off when it first came out and why nobody talks about it now. But yeah, I really don't have much to say about it. I mean, is it the worst Stephen King film I've seen? Absolutely not. And not counting sequels like Children of the Corn sequels or ones that have nothing to do with Stephen King at all. Ones that are actually based on a story. Is it the worst? No. I mean, hell, I would put this over most of the TV miniseries I've seen. Like Langoliers. I might actually put The Shining over this, even though I do hate that movie. It is more interesting just because the atmosphere. This is just not a good movie. Riding the Bullet delivers and shocks. Frank Darabont. Scary, haunting, and surprisingly emotional. Toby Hooper. I mean, it has its emotional parts, I guess. I mean, this could have been a very good emotional journey as far as what I said. This guy that hates life, he realizes to not only appreciate his life, but the finer things and get closer with his mother through this sort of Christmas carol kind of death type of vision or dream or whatever it is. And if it wasn't for David Arquette's over the top performance, then this definitely would not have been half as entertaining. But yeah, bad movie. Not a fan of it at all. I know it's not going to be the worst one I get to this month, but so far it is. But yeah, I still have a stack of Stephen King films to get to. I will pick at the anthologies I have as well, but I'm really in a Stephen King vibe now, so that's going to be predominantly October. Or October's going to be predominantly King, so stay tuned for more of those, and thank you for watching.